You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
And I'm Jordan Harms.
And Andy Bates is somewhere on his way back to the studio. We are live at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis for the Faith and Film Festival in year 3? Is that right? Technically year 3 of the Faith and Film Festival. It's so awesome to be on campus. And Jordan here is my co-host. You've been on the Coffee Hour once before?
I think only once.
I think only once, yes. Well, here is your co-hosting debut for the Coffee Hour. This is very exciting. Before we talk about the Faith and Film Festival, I want to thank our underwriter, Concordia University, Wisconsin, for your support of the Coffee Hour. You can find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
There you go. You got my line today.
Yeah.
Joining me, that's all right. Joining me today is Erika Bennett, who is the Director of Continuing Education at Concordia Seminary. Welcome back to the Coffee Hour.
Good morning.
This is a very exciting day for you.
It is. A little tired, but very exciting.
This is what, day two of the festival?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is happening. So it's January 26th through 28th.
Yes.
Very exciting. And also Dr. Erik Hermann, the Professor of Historical Theology, Dean of Theological Research and Publication, and Director of the Center for Reformation Research at Concordia Seminary. You have a very long title.
A lot of jobs, but yeah, great to be here.
Thanks for joining us today. Now you're kind of involved in some of the facilitation of the movies that are happening on campus. Is that right?
Yeah, for one of the large movies tonight that we're going to show in the auditorium, I'll be part of a panel discussion for that.
Yes, this is very exciting. We'll talk about that in just a second. First, I want to kind of get your background. What is your relationship with film? Why do you love film? Is this kind of something that's it doesn't really jive with a lot of your titles here? So, what do you love about film?
Well, I've never met anyone that hates film. I mean, that seems
fair.
like a strange thing. No, of course I love movies, and I suppose I have 5 kids, and so my tastes and my opportunities have changed quite a bit over the years. So they're older now, so I've moved from Pixar back to some things I used to like watching before. But sure, I think film is a wonderful media to share ideas with and tell stories, and so I love them like most people.
Yeah.
Like most people.
Yeah, of course.
No, that's true. So I'll jump right into one of my questions that I have regarding how do you balance your love of film with a job at a theological position? Mm. Because for people who can't see, we're sitting in a room with a lot of movie posters all the way around us. And I know for a fact that they're all secular films for the most part.
Right.
But I know that things don't necessarily need to be un-Christian. I'm doing air quotes right now.
Right.
Just because they're not pumped full of Christian doctrine and everything like that. So do you try to bring that into your profession here? Like, do you combine the two, like your love of film, and then how does that kind of translate into, I don't know, maybe a ministry for you? This is sort of a question for both of you, really, because
Sure,
I'm sure that plays a part.
Yeah, I suppose I don't see it in terms of Christian or secular. There are stories about people, and that's, I mean, from a Christian worldview, that's the kind of thing that we're interested in. That's whom God has sent His Son for. And so, getting insight into the lives of people, perspectives that maybe I don't have, are particularly important. So, I mean, in terms of making it work with my theological hat, I just think they're reference points of stories that communicate things for students and for preachers and what it means to be human. So yeah, I don't see it as a rival, and I'm not against Christian movies, but I like the idea that we're getting a new perspective on someone's point of view of what it means to be human.
I like that answer a lot.
Because it gives you permission to watch non-Christian movies.
Yes.
Which I needed from you specifically, so I will watch my first un-Christian movie later.
Is that right?
No, I'm kidding.
Excellent.
Erika, do you have ideas about that too?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've always loved to go see movies in the theater, more for the atmosphere than anything else. I would have never to be totally candid, I would have never pulled out Christian themes or, oh, that character is a Christ figure, ever. But now that we've been doing the film festival for a few years, I can't help but notice that. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Jordan, these movies are all, well, some of them are movies that you would be like, how would you find a Christian theme in that movie? But our moderators are amazing. And the insight that our participants, students and people from outside of the seminary that come in, it's been really interesting. We watched a movie last night that, Calvary, that was not my cup of tea. And then in the discussion, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, this is really well done. But yeah.
How does discussion like that help you kind of figure out those things? Because sometimes you do watch movies that are not your cup of tea, and you may not fully understand it until somebody else brings out those themes for you. Yeah. How does this environment kind of help you and the participants do that?
It just gets you to think more about it. And, we're with people that, other Christians, so we share the same beliefs. And some of them know more about film than I do. So it's great. It'd be great if I could bring Heather Choate Davis with me every time I go to a movie, but or Dave Lewis. But yeah.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Hermann, I know there's a thing in the bio that I have for you that says that some books are better than the movies and some movies are better than the books. And I really want to know your thoughts behind this statement.
Yeah, well, we had to say something interesting.
That's fair. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. Right. Welcome to our job description.
Yeah. No, I think that when you deal with movie adaptations of books, there are a couple of things going on. One is you can't replicate visually everything that's happening in the book, and so folks that are critical of the adaptations are mad their favorite thing was left out or that it was told in a different way. But sometimes the movie, not just visually, but also the story that it tells can be kind of more powerful, more moving. So I used the example of like The Godfather, or another one would be The Shining, I would say, is a movie that's really exceeds the story. I mean, kind of a short story by Stephen King now becomes this classic thriller. Whereas there are some, I mean, I think a lot of people, that's an easy one, where people say, oh, the book's much better than the movie. And of course, the quip I gave on that was that I thought the book was better than the movie Passion of Christ. I haven't seen that movie, but I did read the book. And,
that's good.
Is that written by Mel Gibson, the book? Or?
Yeah, right.
No. Let's just clarify. No.
Yeah.
I must be missing something. No. So going off of that, one of the things that we were told in film school all the time is the same thing that everybody's told when they're writing an essay or paper is show, don't tell. So that takes on a whole completely different meaning with film. So do you find that movies that you typically think are better than the book, they do a better job of showing maybe what you read in the book, but like because it's different than any kind of medium, whether that be theater or video games or whatever. If you are in a theater, you always act to the back row. They always say, like, make sure the back row can hear you. Well, in a movie, the entire audience could possibly be like 4 inches from your face if that's the camera, So I think that I'm mainly just agreeing with you. I think that if you show and you don't tell, like you don't need a character to sit here and explain the plot and talk about who's talking to me now. You can convey things with a facial expression or a musical cue or something.
Yeah, there's an immediacy there, and it evokes things for you that maybe have to be described otherwise. I mean, a beautiful passage in a book may evoke things for you, but to actually see and musically enhance something is a whole different way of getting about it. And I teach a class on C.S. Lewis, and he talks about writing as a good writer doesn't tell you how to feel. He writes things that make you feel that way.
Yes.
Right? And movies are definitely that kind of medium too. Yeah.
And they can have the opposite effect too.
Yeah, well, exactly right.
There's a passage you really like in a book, and then it's really poorly portrayed.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I think that strikes a chord. That is with me anyway. Like, that is not how I envisioned it. And then I think that's where the easy answer comes from. Like, oh, the book was better.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because I felt it was better.
Right.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite movie that is better than a book, Dr. Hermann? No, I'm throwing you a big question here.
You are.
Got to think about it for a second.
Favorite movie that's better than a book,
or just a favorite movie in general. I'm curious. I do not know film.
You have seen the book and read the book.
Yes, that's true. Jordan and I are kind of on opposite ends of this film spectrum. Jordan knows a lot about film as a film person. You know a lot more than I know. Very little film and pop culture references. So.
Right.
I was giving you time to think there.
Yeah.
No, that was good. That was good. Well, I suppose I'll go here. This is an easy one. Is the whole Lord of the Rings.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
We don't have time for this.
No.
3 hours later.
Right. No, I was a huge, and still am a huge fan of the books. And and it's fun when you meet someone who was. I was out in Washington earlier, going through someone's library, person who had died, and I found their old version of the Lord of the Rings, an old paperback version in there, and everyone like gathered around with reverence. Like, I remember the first time I read that, but I do remember the first time I saw the movie, and they first showed Hobbiton, and I think I almost wept. I was just like, oh, they captured this thing in my heart for a moment. And obviously there's things to critique, but I think both of those in their own way have sort of captured something magical there. So.
Yes.
And I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Some people might be really, I'm on the extended version and all that kind of jazz.
I'm unoffended by your answer.
Okay. All right.
There is something really cool though when you've read a book and then you see the movie and it is exactly how you pictured it in your head, and that all kind of just jives. And there is the opposite effect when you and it's not. You're like, oh, this is disappointing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we just really quick. Growing up, we always read books as a family. Like, we would all have copies and read it and then discuss. And when we found out books that were going to become movies, as a family, we had fun saying, who do you think would play this person? Who would you, if you were asked, who would you like to play this character? And that's been really fun. So,
yeah. We got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. We have more to talk about. We are live at the Faith and Film Festival at Concordia Seminary. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
And I'm Jordan Harms.
You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to csl.edu.
You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Jordan Harms.
We are live at the Faith and Film Festival at Concordia Seminary, happening right now. Started yesterday, ends tomorrow. This is very exciting. It's very quiet here right now because I believe, are all the participants in a feature film right now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, there's 4 movies going on right now.
Oh, 4 movies.
Oh, we're missing out.
Even more exciting than I thought. We're here with Erika Bennett and Dr. Erik Hermann talking about film and books and movies and what all of this means, what this festival is about. And I know, Dr. Hermann, you are a facilitator for a film that's happening tonight. And this was an extra special secret film that was not announced when we talked with Erika the last time about the film festival. So you couldn't tell us which movie this was. So this is a very exciting thing. Dr. Hermann, can you tell us what movie you are facilitating and what it's about? And then we'll get into it a little more.
Excellent. Yeah. So it's Ad Astra. It's a science fiction movie with Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. And so we're showing that to everyone tonight. And we have a panel. We're going to talk about that movie in particular, but also I think just themes that science fiction bring out, that this movie is sort of an excellent representation of a science fiction kind of movie, dealing with some of those big kind of large themes that are typical.
All right.
If you had to pick,
Oh boy.
Oh,
Here
no.
it comes.
Oh no.
decaf or no, I'm kidding.
That might be an easier answer.
Coffee hour.
Sci-fi or fantasy?
Ooh.
Oh gosh. I suppose I don't like fantasy, except for we talked about on the our other side of the break, Tolkien, who kind of invented it. But everything else is sort of a footnote to Tolkien on that, and so it's all kind of eh. But science fiction, I think, is a little bit more. Well, as a professor, I like sort of the philosophical stuff that goes there. And when I say science fiction, I don't mean like Star Wars, which is just a cowboy movie in space.
It's sort of a sci-fi fantasy, lowercase sci-fi, I'd say. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was going to accept that as like your answer of like, I like both. So Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
No, I mean, I mean, who doesn't like Star Wars? I suppose, but it's not. I wouldn't put that in the science fiction category. The way I think of it, I think of it as it's Stanley Kubrick, 2001: Space Odyssey kind of stuff. That's ponderous, slow. Yeah, actually, none of my family likes those movies, so I only get to watch those movies on airplanes on my way to conferences. So they tend to be. I'm very excited about seeing Ad Astra on a screen that's larger than my phone.
Okay.
cool.
Very nice. I have a follow-up.
Go for it.
So I'm the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
I like both, but I think that a lot of my family and extended family don't see eye to eye with me on the whole sci-fi thing. But
Yeah.
you said Tolkien's kind of the creator, if
Sure.
you will, and everything's a footnote. What would be your sci-fi equivalent?
Well,
What seems like if
good.
Wow.
you said Ad Astra, I've always said Ad Astra. Am I saying that wrong?
Me too.
no, it's Latin. So it's Ad
Okay,
Astra.
that makes way more sense.
Cleared that up.
Yes,
To
thank
the
you.
stars.
So,
Yeah.
Ad Astra, you like it as a sci-fi movie, but
Yeah.
is it a footnote to something greater?
As a movie or as just
As a sci-fi movie, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's a foot. I mean, it's in the 2001: Space Odyssey
Gotcha.
tradition. I would say is kind of the that's sort of the launch of really these sorts of large sci-fi movies with those kinds of themes in it. In terms of the genre, I mean, you go all the way back to H.G. Wells and the War of the Worlds kind of stuff. So there's
Love
the
it.
alien thing. Yeah.
Erika, I'm curious if you have an answer to that question too.
Me too.
If you have to choose between fantasy and sci-fi.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm not a
All
big
right.
sci-fi. So
We've got both.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will have to say that I was not a fan of either sci-fi or fantasy until just a few years ago when my husband is a huge fan of both of these.
Okay.
And so he finally got me starting to watch some of these movies. And I get it now. I get why people like these movies now, which is really cool. I do want to ask though, and I might be throwing myself under the bus, what is the difference between fantasy and sci-fi? Like, how do you define these two different genres? I feel like there's some overlap, but I might also just be a newbie enough that I don't understand it fully.
I probably don't know as much to answer it as Eric, but what comes to mind instantly for me is that fantasy, for some reason, I think fantasy and magical. Even though some people might think that sci-fi is like so far out there, it's not real, but at least it has more of that than the fantasy. Like we talked a little bit ago about Harry Potter. Totally fantasy.
Yeah.
And, it just takes you, movies take you to another place all the time, but fantasy is like a magical, unreal place that you can go.
Yeah.
So
I think I would also be in camp fantasy too. I
think you would.
I feel like there's a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. I see the theme connections, like we're talking about Christ figures and finding these like biblical themes. I've been able to connect a lot of that into these fantasy movies that I've started watching. Maybe I'm just missing out on sci-fi. So speaking of sci-fi, what are some of the themes in general in sci-fi movies? You're talking about these large themes, overarching themes. What are some of those things that you see throughout sci-fi movies?
Well, I probably gave it away by saying that they're large themes. I think one of them is smallness, small and large. I mean, what it means to be overwhelmed by a universe that's outside of your control, and what does it mean to be human? And when you encounter maybe another life form, that's kind of part of it too. But also how little control we have over our own technology. I mean, once you throw up you sit on the tip of a little rocket and you throw yourself up into space, it sounds like a great achievement until you're up there, and then you're just sort of around by this giant universe, and it rips you apart. And so there's, I think, the smallness of human nature, and then kind of meaning and purpose in light of a big universe that keeps coming up in sci-fi films. And what William Shatner just went up into space,
Right.
And he came back, and he kind of almost wept when he came back, and he had this what's called this. I forget what the actual term is, but basically he suddenly became extremely homesick. And he only went up for a little while, didn't go out very far, but he looked out there, and then he looked back at his home, and he says, this is my home. I mean, everything out there, he didn't see space as beautiful. He saw space as empty. And so it drew him back home, and he said, I had this profound experience, and I hope I never lose that sense of how important this place is.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I think it taps in. Not all of them do that, I think, but a lot of them tap into that experience.
Yeah.
Fahrenway. Is that the name of the term?
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Did you just Google that?
I knew it was a name. Okay, I'll be full disclosure. I knew it was the name of a distillery in Hermann, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
But I
Well,
couldn't
there you
think
go.
of it.
Wow.
It's sort of like the inverse of homesick.
Yep.
It's like adventure sick.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Cool.
and I think he might have even used that term when he came back, because he's very profound with his words anyway.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of the opposite of nostalgia.
yeah, exactly. It's almost like I need that wonder back.
Right.
But so you were mentioning how you can identify a lot more with
Yes, I was.
with sort of Christian themes and biblical themes with fantasy. I think that often, and speaking as a sci-fi and fantasy person, but sort of to all of you, I think that fantasy is sort of a gateway. It's easy to make those connections biblically, but then I think the more you consume, if I can use that word, I think you'll find that it's really easy to find those larger themes in sci-fi as well. I think that an effective sci-fi, whether it tries to or not, always has some sort of a societal like critique that it's doing, no matter what. I didn't always see that growing up. I was sort of brought up in sci-fi as well. So I watched Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, star insert thing. You know? And I just liked them for almost the fantasy aspect of the sci-fi. Like, this is fun. Then as I got older, I started to realize, and effective science fiction is sort of taking the hard science that we know about the world around us, applying fiction to it, and asking a bunch of what if questions. And
Exactly
I think that's a really powerful tool from sci-fi, which can also, tick a lot of people off depending on what the sci-fi is. Like, that would never happen, but it's science fiction. Who are you to say?
Yeah.
It makes
And
you
it
ask
asks
a lot of questions.
It gets you to ask kind of questions about meaning and purpose. And I think it's not just about technology and space. That's sort of the canvas in which we sort of suddenly see these questions much more brighter and much more urgent on us.
Yeah. So we have about a minute and a half left. So Erika, what are some of the highlights? What are you looking forward to with this festival happening today still?
Yesterday when I welcomed the group, I was surprised how many people in the audience, this was their first time coming to our Faith and Film Festival.
Oh, wow.
And so that is so exciting because they will all go back home and tell their friends and family about it. And I just love that. I mean, there's just such a great energy in this building yesterday and today. It's so hard to explain if you haven't participated in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to? Do you have a movie or favorite movie of this film festival?
Actually, the first movie I saw yesterday, I didn't think I would like it because of the subject matter, but I love it. Promising Young Woman, which is a fairly new film. And there's a little part in it where you're like, oh, it's going to have a happy ending, which is my favorite of every movie that, the boy meets girl and they end up together at the end. And Dave Lewis, who was one of the moderators for it, he, after we were watching it, he said, Erika, the part where it seemed like it was going to have a happy ending and the boy and girl kissed and were together, I thought of you instantly. And then I was like, oh, she's not going to be happy in like 2 minutes.
Oh, boy.
Excellent.
Oh, boy. Well, Erika, Dr. Hermann, it's been so great having you here. It's awesome
Thank
being
you.
on campus,
Yes.
live from the Faith and Film Festival. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Jordan Harms.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.